This is not a sponsored video. Gear review! Ow, fuck! The FujiFilm x70 is an interesting compact camera. In Fuji's words, it's a premium compact camera for everyday use. Nowadays, premium compact cameras are an interesting topic. Considering how powerful phone cameras have become, the idea of a compact camera, it almost seems redundant. After all, the average person now has a pretty damn powerful camera in their pocket most of the time. But compact cameras have a place in the hands of many users. They're perfect for people who need a camera just to point and shoot. Others, like me, need a small camera to be both a set it and forget it style camera, but also just a small and discreet shooter. A camera that can make it into places like concerts, or even places that prevent people from bringing professional cameras. You know, like the top of the Empire State Building, for example. But first, a little bit of context. The reason I picked up a used Fujifilm x70 in the first place. Well, 2-ish years ago, I had a Sony RX100 IV, and that little guy went everywhere with me. It was my pocketable camera to help shoot different angles on my videos. It was a perfect behind the scenes camera. I used it really often. It was a beauty, and I truly loved that camera. And I got it for an absolute steal on Craigslist. From New York City to Arizona, from Costa Rica to Maine, from Connecticut to Atlanta. And judging by the way I'm speaking in the past tense and how I said the word Atlanta, you can probably tell something bad happened there. So to soften up the profound sorrow I'm feeling right now, I'm gonna draw this on a whiteboard for you guys. I like drawing on whiteboards. So there I was in Atlanta with my dear friend Keith. Keith and I make films together over on the Nailed It Network. It's insanely important to me, go check it out. Anyway, we were down in Atlanta for a really important meeting. And to the typical Nailed It form, our luck was just incredible. We went to Atlanta on the one weekend out of the year it snowed. The meeting was canceled, the flight home was canceled, the city was completely debilitated by an inch of snow. Now where I come from, that's called a dusting, but to them, Jesus shit, that was the snowpocalypse. But I digress. Atlanta is weak sauce compared to New York City, fight me. There was nothing to do until our flight the next day. The restaurants were closed, hell, everything was closed, save for a few bars. So we decided the mission was to get spectacularly drunk. On the walk to the bar, however, I slipped on an icy sidewalk. I bruised myself up, but I was mostly okay until we got into the bar, and I went to take a picture of the amazing Guinness pour that just happened. The RX wouldn't turn on. So I do need to emphasize here, I wasn't drunk when this happened. We were going to get drunk when it happened, I wasn't drunk. I actually had the warranty from the dude I bought the RX from, but of course, I was 3 weeks out of the warranty period. They wanted $250 just to look at the thing. I thought, my buddy Matt, he's a whiz at customizing Game Boys and fixing old video games. I mean, how different is a camera? Well, to make a long story long, the RX is fucked and I don't deem it worth fixing. Tell me how you feel about the RX100 IV and it being gone. Want a divorce? So on to the next, more affordable thing. I did my research and I set my sights on another sketchy Craigslist deal for a Fujifilm x70. I really wanted the silver one because, come on. But the deal on the black one was too good, so I copped it, and in my silly Lou brain, I hoped that the x70 would be my RX100 replacement. A compact camera that could absolutely excel in both stills and video. Small enough to keep it in a pocket and unassuming to most people. A little beast. Old reliable, if you will. So please, keep that in mind as I discuss the x70. And finally, we're gonna review this camera a little bit differently, as I'm working in a hybrid shooting environment, meaning both photo and video. If we're talking strictly photography, to me, this camera's a stunner. I've been shooting on it for about 8 months now, and I'm consistently surprised by the photos. The colors are beautiful, and the film emulations within the camera, they're fun to play around with. And for the size of the camera, it really is amazing what you can do with it. Raw files are saved as RAFs, and they can be lightly edited within the camera. Then you can Wi-Fi connect to your phone, work in Lightroom or Snapseed, or whatever you use. It's a pretty awesome workflow, honestly. To really test out the camera, I took it out with me as often as I could. I did a ton of shooting in Manhattan. In terms of street photography, I'm really in love with this camera. It's so small and unsuspecting, but it really packs a punch. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a prolific street photographer or anything, but I feel like I can get shit done with this camera. It's dope because the touch to shoot mode allows you to be somewhat sneaky with your shooting, which I'm a big fan of because I don't like talking to strangers. During the process of writing this review, we also checked out an Italian street fair in Hoboken, New Jersey, although that somewhat turned into day drinking more than anything else if I'm being honest here, but it was still fun. I still got to shoot around a little bit. I did a little bit of street photography here and there, and you know, honestly, this view of Manhattan doesn't really hurt either. The bokeh, or bouquet as I recently found out, which kind of ruined my life, is pretty beautiful. But considering it's a wide-angle lens, you really do have to get close to your subject to make anything happen. Most recently, I took the X70 to a waterfall I never visited before in Connecticut, known as the Devil's Hop Yard. I know, it's a pretty cool name. Apparently, it comes from people saying they saw the devil sitting on this boulder at the top of the waterfall playing his violin. I suppose the locals were into Charlie Daniels. But with a name like the Devil's Hop Yard, I think it's only fitting that we do a brutal B-roll section here. Happy with how all the photos turned out, and some of these black and white conversions are just amazing, but the Fujifilm colors, it's hard to explain, it's just really nice. And here's an added bonus for you. If you're a noob like me and forgot your tripod, you can also kind of just prop the camera up on your backpack with the articulating screen, and then you can use your slow shutter speeds. It's not perfect, but it's kind of a nice backup plan, I guess. The low light performance is pretty good too. I shot this long exposure out in Connecticut just on the ground using my patented articulating screen tripod situation, and I'm pretty pleased with the results. This low light performance is also true with the video mode as well. It's pretty good, but you know, don't expect A7S results. Where the Fuji really excels in photography, I think it quite equally flops on video. Unfortunately, it really feels like the video mode was just a complete afterthought. To me, having a small setup like this with an articulating screen and continuous autofocus that works in the video mode, that just screams the perfect little second camera to have with you. In my workflow, that second camera is one that I can set and forget when I'm making a video like this one. And let me tell you, having a camera like that is huge to me. I'd say 85% of the time I'm working on these videos alone with the occasional friend giving me a hand. So the camera that I leave in the set it and forget it position needs to be trustworthy enough to land focus consistently and not be fiddly. And on the flip side, if I give this camera to a friend who's helping me out, who doesn't necessarily know a lot about cameras, the set it and forget it camera needs to be simple enough to basically go into that person's hands and just work. You know, I want to be able to tell the person, yeah, just tap the face and you're good to go. And the X70 is pretty much the opposite of what I just described. The continuous autofocus is absolutely unusable for video in my opinion. The amount of time the camera spends hunting is crazy. Even when it seems to snap onto that focus, it still breathes a little bit, if you know what I mean. It tends to drift around that sharp focus mark consistently. And the sound of the autofocus motor is unbearable. It can easily be heard in your videos. Listen to that motor. So to me, continuous autofocus is unusable in the video mode. That's one strike. If you use the by-wire focus ring, you'll find it quite difficult to actually focus during filming. See, the ring is honestly pretty small, so it's very easy to fumble while you make those adjustments. And given the size of the camera, it's pretty tough to keep it steady if you're shooting handheld while simultaneously trying to focus. So the continuous autofocus doesn't work, the manual isn't great either. Another gripe I have with the video side of things is the auto ISO. Now I'm gonna level with you here. I actually don't really use this feature too much. I prefer to set things myself, but if you're moving quickly, it's nice to know that it's there. And the auto ISO on this camera is really interesting because it actually allows you to cap it, so you can tell it not to exceed, let's say, 3200. That is great, but the problem is the camera moves ISO in steps, so it's not a smooth transition when the camera is deciding to change the ISO. There goes another great function that's unusable in video mode. And speaking of the ISO, there's no great place to program the ISO onto a custom button in my mind. See, you can put it on the trash bin here, that's cool I guess, but I would say the perfect spot for it would be this selector switch right here. That way you can change the aperture on the front, the shutter speed on the top, and the ISO right here. In my experience, the only real non-menu driven spot you can slip the ISO is onto the front dial, which I'm completely not a fan of. Let me know in the comments below if you figured out how to program the ISO onto this selector though, that would be huge for me. If you can get by all the shortcomings, the video footage itself looks really nice. I really do love the colors, and you can get a load of that footage right here. If you remember the first not vlog I ever put up, that was shot entirely on the X70. You could shoot up to 60 frames per second in 1080p, and of course the other usual suspects are here, 24, 25, and 30. You can also shoot all those in 720 for some reason, I guess. So where exactly does this camera excel in video? Well, in a very very specific set of applications. I think it needs to be on a tripod or a stabilizer or something, and you pretty much have to be shooting something that's static, or at least relatively static. To be thoroughly clear here, this is not a camera for vlogging, in my opinion anyway. I think just because you have an articulating flippy screen doesn't necessarily imply that it's a good vlog camera, but it's also not the second camera I wanted for this channel. It's not a good backup, and frankly, in my opinion, I don't really think the X70 is meant to be a video camera. It's great that the option's available for some light shooting, but it's just not practical, and I just don't think this is meant to be a hybrid shooter. And one last thing, which is just a beautiful segue into our next topic, the default record button. Oh my god, it makes me so fucking angry. You gotta like go over the exposure compensation dial and hold it to start and then hold it again to stop. I know I keep memeing the A7S record button location, but this one, holy shit, this takes the fucking cake. It is just so bad. Let's shift gears over to ergonomics, aesthetics, and ease of use. The camera is really well built. It feels sturdy as hell. I can actually attest to that fact. This camera has taken 2 nasty spills in my care. The first one happened when I was using the cheap, shitty included wrist strap. As I was walking back to my car, the fabric on the wrist strap broke and the camera fell and landed right on the concrete. And then last week, as I was finishing up this script, it fell out of my camera bag, and again, just free fall right onto concrete. It still works. It's a little ugly though. It's got a little deformity right here. But hey, it still works. The battery door is fucked though. It opens, but you gotta like pry it with your fingernail. It's not ideal, but if there's one thing this camera has on the RX100, man, it can take a fall. And you know, I used to think I was really good about not dropping my stuff, you know, taking care of my gear, but I don't know. The camera is small. I feel like my hands are a little too big for it. The grip supports basically like my index and middle fingers only, and sometimes if I go to manually focus, my fat stupid thumb has gotten into a photo or two. The size, it's a double-edged sword in my opinion. On the one hand, it's amazing to be able to toss this into a pocket and keep it on you at all times. On the other, the size makes it slightly more difficult to hold the camera steady. To me, having a bulkier, heavier camera distributes the weight better, and it makes it easier to handhold. I really do love the dials, they're so nice. The shutter speed, the aperture, the exposure compensation dials, they're all wonderfully clicky. You can even change their values while the camera is off, and when you turn it on, the camera will reflect those changes you made immediately. The switchy side dial here that flips between the focus modes is brutal though. It's so easy to fly right by the continuous autofocus mode. Ironically, in my opinion, that's probably the worst autofocus mode, so I don't know, maybe that was a design decision? There's also a nice amount of buttons on the camera. They all feel good, they feel responsive and clicky. This flippy door on the side is awesome. You can open it and plug in HDMI, USB to charge it or connect it to a computer, and plug in a microphone. The battery door is fine. Well, I mean, mine was fine, now it's broken. Because of gravity, not me. And of course, that's where you also put your SD card in, which is slightly annoying to get to now that my battery door is messed up. Battery life is fine. For the most part, they've lasted my days of shooting. They drain much faster when you're in video mode though. They're rated for roughly 300 photos, and in my experience, if you're mainly taking pictures, you'll likely be fine to charge it once you get home. It's also an awesome thought to be able to just plug this into a car charger or a portable battery. It's pretty convenient. The lens itself is an 85mm f2.8 Fuji lens, which is a 28mm equivalent on full frame. We're working with a 16.3 megapixel CMOS sensor. There's both a mechanical leaf and electronic shutter, and a 77-point hybrid autofocus system. The screen is bright, it works well. It does struggle a little bit in bright sunlight though. The touch controls are nice and they're pretty responsive. Aesthetically, this camera is a straight 10. Fire emojis all around. The dials, the shape, it's gorgeous. Even the lens cap is a handsome piece of just precise metal. Just don't leave it in your back pocket with all your change, because you'll be jingling more than a drunken Santa on Christmas Eve. It also feels weird on your butt if you sit. And finally, the menus, they're okay. This is actually the first digital Fuji camera I've owned. You know I have a ton of nice things to say about the Fuji Instax cameras though, but the menus, it just took me a little bit of getting used to. It's pretty simple to use and it's very user intuitive. So overall, I'm kinda torn on the X70. On the one side, the photography is amazing. I think the camera is great for street photography, and I think it's great to bring to places where your DSLR couldn't normally go, but the video mode is a huge bummer. If you're looking for a pocketable point and shoot for your photography, something you can keep with you and pull out whenever you just want to enjoy shooting, I think the X70 is a good choice for you. If you're like me and you need a hybrid shooter to replace your deceased RX100, maybe not. As I was wrapping up this video, I ended up talking to my friend Andrew about it. Now Andrew did a video about the X70 as well. You should go check out his channel, by the way, Danae and Andrew, linked in the description and at the end card and all that fun stuff, but he had some very strong thoughts on the X70 as well. Andrew said it's great as a wide-angle point and shoot, perfect for street, travel, and selfies. And I guess that's the biggest problem. It only has two advantages over the smartphone in your pocket. One, slightly better depth of field, and two, those gorgeous Fuji colors. In terms of the video, he was saying that it was an afterthought. You don't have full manual control, the AFC in video is not great, and the micromotor focusing noise is unbearable, and the record button seems like it was designed to discourage you from pressing it. And that last part really stuck with me there. It's kind of the sentiment I had about the video as well. All in all, I don't regret buying this camera, but if it wasn't for a sketch Craigslist deal and I paid full price for this one, I might be singing a little bit of a different tune here. Thanks for watching, guys. Really appreciate you. As always, make sure you smash that subscribe button and like and comment and all that stuff. You know what to do. I don't have to tell you. But no, seriously, I do appreciate you. You're beautiful. Thanks for listening to me ramble, and have a good one. I'll see you in the next video next Friday, probably. Other shooters like me need a small camera that can both... Other photographers... Oh! I had a Sony RX100... Oh, fuck. There was nothing to do until on the walk to the bar, I slipped on an icy sidewalk. It's fucked. It doesn't... Unassuming to most people. The colors are beautiful, and most recently I took the X70 over to... I'm really happy with how these... I'm really happy with how these pictures... God damn it, dude. I'm really happy with how these pictures came out, and especially some of... I'm really happy with how these pictures... God. Aesthetically, for me, this camera is a 10. It's fire. Fire emojis, you know?